Hello, everyone. This is Rachel Maddow. A shocking development has emerged in Washington today, and what it reveals changes everything. Official documents obtained from sealed court records, along with internal correspondence marked confidential, show a chain of events that has already sent tremors through the Republican Party. Not just minor disagreements, full-scale chaos. And the implications reach far beyond the usual political battles. Two internal memos, dated just last week, describe meetings between top GOP senators and key advisors to the former president. Let me read this word for word. One memo states, quote, "Coordination on messaging collapsed after multiple legal advisories were ignored. Contingency plans have been shelved indefinitely." Read that again. Contingency plans shelved indefinitely. That's not something you see every day in Washington. And it gets worse. According to these records, the breakdown wasn't gradual. It was sudden, abrupt, and caught multiple offices by surprise. Before we go further, subscribe right now, because what you're about to hear is not being explained clearly anywhere else. The first piece of evidence comes from a batch of internal emails, over 15,000 in total, recently released as evidence in a related proceeding. One email chain, dated January 12th, lists detailed flight logs for the former president's travel schedule, showing meetings with high-ranking advisors that, according to court testimony, never actually happened. In fact, one witness, under oath, described discovering an email confirming a meeting that was scheduled but deliberately canceled without notifying several senators. The internal correspondence is heavily redacted. Names blacked out, locations blurred, but the pattern is unmistakable. Then there's a set of contemporaneous notes from a January 14th strategy session. The notes, written by an aide identified only as redacted 3, indicate repeated discussions about the Supreme Court ruling that would hit the party's legislative agenda. Let me read this excerpt, not once, not twice. Repeatedly, the message is, anticipate total disruption. The outcome may force unilateral decisions, regardless of internal objections. Think about that. Repeatedly. Unilateral decisions. This is not the normal give and take of political strategy. This is internal alarm documented in writing. A photograph surfaced from the same day, reportedly taken inside a closed-door briefing room, showing multiple advisors surrounding a table stacked with documents labeled OFICAL. Do not CRCRK. The photograph is grainy, but you can see at least 7 binders marked with bold letters, along with what appears to be a heavily annotated copy of the Supreme Court ruling itself. Court records indicate the annotations include comments like immediate action required, all hands notified. This is the part no one expected. That these annotations were made in real time, under strict supervision, suggests urgency beyond standard procedural measures. Internal reports obtained from a whistleblower also detail the flow of communications between the White House counsel's office and the GOP leadership. According to these reports, dozens of messages flagged with HIG, HPRIORITY were left unanswered or redirected to junior aides. One note dated January 15th at 11:07 a.m. reads, critical. Senators must approve before release. Delay could jeopardize entire response. Under oath, one former aide testified that several senior officials were instructed to ignore these messages. Flight manifests from January 16th show a series of unannounced trips between D.C. and key swing states. Internal correspondence obtained as evidence describes the purpose of these trips. Direct outreach to influential party members who were reportedly unaware of the Supreme Court decision's details. Let me be clear. Tens of thousands of pages of documents now show a coordinated, yet haphazard effort to manage information internally while the public remained in the dark. One particularly striking set of letters released as evidence this morning are from a senior DOJ advisor to the former president's legal team. Dated January 17th, the letters repeatedly emphasized that ignoring the Supreme Court ruling could result in immediate political fallout and potential internal disciplinary action. The advisor under oath confirmed that these warnings were not speculative. They were grounded in legal assessments prepared over months. And then there's testimony from a former senator's aide. Under oath, the aide described being summoned at 3 a.m. on January 18th to review documents labeled urgent, executive decisión required. The aide recalled reading emails stating, quote, every department has acknowledged the ruling, yet no single office is coordinating effectively. Expect public disclosure within 48 hours. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Internal documents indicate this scenario was predicted, yet ignored. A separate batch of flight logs and hotel receipts adds another layer of intrigue. They show multiple trips that, according to contemporaneous notes, were intended to facilitate last-minute discussions with key influencers about messaging post-ruling. Names in these records are redacted, but the pattern of movement is precise, calculated, and coordinated in real time. Court testimony confirms these trips were specifically designed to manage perceptions among party leadership before any public statement. Finally, an internal photograph marked confidential legal revidability shows a pile of subpoenas next to a binder with handwritten notes dated January 19th. The notes, attributed to a senior legal advisor, read prepare for escalation. In short, every communication is documented. Expect subpoenas. Expect scrutiny. Think about that. Prepared for escalation. Expect scrutiny. The documents don't just suggest planning, they demand it. Picking up where we left off, the documents continue to reveal patterns that are both troubling and extraordinary. A set of internal correspondence spanning January 20th through January 22nd shows repeated attempts by mid-level staff to alert senior leadership that the fallout from the Supreme Court ruling was being underestimated. Let me read this word for word. Multiple advisors report confusion at the state level. Coordination absent. Risks escalating by the hour. Read that again. Risks escalating by the hour. And this is not isolated. Not once, not twice. Repeatedly, these warnings were flagged in official records and ignored. Next, we have a series of emails exchanged between the former president's counsel and a senior GOP strategist. The emails are heavily redacted, but one passage stands out. The documents show a significant deviation from our original plan. Immediate intervention required, or consequences could be catastrophic. Think about that. Significant deviation, catastrophic consequences. The memo concludes with a note underlined 3 times. All actions documented under oath. Any misstep will be traceable. That is the level of precision we're seeing in these files. Internal reports obtained from the House Oversight Office further illuminate the chaos. One report, dated January 23rd, details over 200 missed communications between legal advisors and key party members. The report emphasizes, quote, failure to act promptly on these correspondences has created unprecedented confusion. Senate leadership now questions operational control. Here's the part no one expected. According to testimony, several senior senators publicly claimed surprise at the ruling's implications, despite multiple internal advisories. Another compelling piece of evidence comes from flight logs and hotel records dated January 24th. They show late-night travel to multiple GOP strongholds. The internal notes attached to these logs explain that the trips were intended to brief influential lawmakers on how to respond to the ruling. But here's the kicker. The briefings themselves were documented as incomplete, and one aide testified under oath that critical files were deliberately withheld from participants. Tens of thousands of documents released as evidence also include images of physical files stacked in offices labeled immediate legal review and internal strategy only. One photo clearly shows a binder with the word Supreme Court ruling, top secret scrawled on the cover. In court, a witness described this binder as containing the most sensitive communications I've ever handled, not once, not twice. Repeatedly, these records show deliberate attempts to control the narrative internally while leaving external officials in the dark. We also have testimony from an unnamed insider who described a series of secret meetings in a secure location in D.C. dated January 25th and 26th. Under oath, the insider stated, quote, we were instructed to prepare talking points that contradicted previous public statements. Every line had to be approved internally before it could be spoken externally. That's a startling revelation. It means the messaging was controlled at a level that bypassed standard party channels, a clear sign of panic and internal disorder. Another set of documents, including internal calendars and contemporaneous notes, shows a string of emergency meetings between legal advisors and former campaign staff. One calendar entry, timestamped January 26th at 2 a.m.,